Zara had been watching Earth for 6 months from her ship in space. She was not human. She came from a planet called Velros, far away in another part of the galaxy. Her people were part of something called the Galactic Federation. This was a group of many alien races that worked together to keep peace in space. Her job was simple: watch the humans and write reports about them. Do not make contact. Do not interfere. Just observe and learn. The Federation wanted to know if humans were ready to join the galactic community. Most species needed hundreds of years of peace before they could be trusted with advanced technology. Humans were still fighting among themselves, so the Federation kept its distance. But Zara found humans fascinating. They were different from any species she had studied before. When other civilizations faced problems, they tried to avoid conflict and find easy solutions. Humans did something strange. They seemed to run toward danger instead of away from it. They climbed the highest mountains just to say they did it. They explored the deepest oceans even when it was risky. They competed in sports that could hurt them, and they loved stories about heroes who faced impossible odds. Zara could not understand this behavior at first. Why would anyone choose to make life harder? Her own people had eliminated most challenges from their daily lives. They lived in comfortable cities where everything was automated. Disease was cured. Poverty was eliminated. War was a distant memory. Life was safe, predictable, and easy. Yet something troubled Zara about her own civilization. Despite all their comfort and technology, her people seemed to have lost something important. They rarely invented new things anymore. They did not explore. They did not take risks. When unexpected problems appeared, they panicked. They had become soft, she realized, too dependent on their machines and their safe lives. Humans were the opposite. They struggled every day. Their planet had harsh weather, dangerous animals, and limited resources. They had to work hard for everything they achieved. Wars and disasters were part of their history. Yet somehow they kept going. They kept building, creating, and pushing forward. Zara began to wonder if struggle made humans stronger rather than weaker. One day everything changed. Zara was making her usual observations when her ship's alarm suddenly screamed to life. A field of space debris was heading straight toward her. Rocks and metal fragments from an old satellite collision were moving fast. Too fast for her to avoid. She tried to steer away, but a large piece of metal struck her ship's side. The impact was violent. Zara was thrown against her control panel. Sparks flew from damaged systems. The ship began to spin out of control. More debris hit the hull, tearing holes in the outer plating. Air started leaking into space. Zara worked frantically at the controls, trying to stabilize the ship. But the damage was too severe. The engines were failing. Life support was failing. She had only one option. She had to land on Earth. The Federation protocols were clear. Making contact with humans was forbidden. Landing on their planet would break every rule. But the alternative was dying in space. She aimed for a remote area she had identified during her observations. A desert region with few people. Maybe she could land, repair her ship, and leave before anyone noticed. It was a desperate plan, but it was all she had. The ship entered Earth's atmosphere, trailing smoke and fire. The heat was intense. The shields were barely holding. Zara gripped her seat as the ground rushed up to meet her. She tried to slow the descent, but the engines would not respond. The ship hit the desert sand at tremendous speed, bouncing and tumbling across the dunes. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. The world spun violently around her, then everything went black. When Zara woke up, she was not in her ship anymore. She was lying in a bed in a small, clean room. Medical equipment surrounded her, though it looked primitive compared to what she was used to. Her head hurt. Her body ached. But she was alive. A human entered the room. He was tall with short brown hair and kind eyes. He wore a military uniform with many badges and symbols. When he saw she was awake, he smiled. The expression seemed genuine, not threatening. The human spoke in English, but Zara's translator device had survived the crash. It converted his words into her language. His name was Daniel Carter. He was a commander in the United States Air Force. He explained that her ship had crashed in a restricted military area in the Nevada desert. Military personnel had pulled her from the wreckage and brought her to this medical facility. Zara expected to be treated as a prisoner or a threat. That was standard procedure in most civilizations when unknown aliens appeared. But Daniel did not act hostile. He seemed concerned about her injuries. He asked if she was in pain. He wanted to make sure she was comfortable. Over the next few days, other humans came to check on her. Doctors examined her carefully but gently. Guards stood outside her room, but they nodded politely when they saw her. A woman named Lisa brought her food and explained what each item was. The humans were curious about her but not aggressive. Daniel visited every day. He asked about her home planet, her mission, and the Galactic Federation. Zara was not sure how much to reveal, but Daniel seemed trustworthy. She explained that she had been observing Earth to determine if humans were ready for contact with other civilizations. She apologized for crashing on their planet. It was not her intention to break the non-interference protocols. Daniel listened carefully to everything she said. Then he surprised her with his response. He said that humans already knew about aliens, not just from her ship, but from many other visitors over the years. Earth had been contacted dozens of times by different species. The human governments had kept this information secret from most of their population, but military and scientific leaders knew the truth. Zara was shocked. This changed everything. If humans knew about alien life and had made contact before, why had the Federation not detected any of this? Why did humans keep it secret? What else did they know? Daniel smiled at her confused expression. He said he wanted to show her something that would answer all her questions. But first she needed to recover from her injuries. He promised that once she was strong enough to walk, he would take her to a place that would change everything she thought she knew about humanity. Zara's curiosity burned. What could be so important? What secret were humans hiding? She agreed to rest and heal, but her mind was racing with possibilities. In just a few days, she would discover something that would not only change her understanding of humans, but would transform her entire life. 2 weeks after the crash, Zara could walk again. Her injuries had healed faster than expected. The human doctors seemed impressed with her recovery rate. Daniel said it was time to show her what he had promised. Early one morning, Daniel led her out of the medical building. They walked through a military base that looked ordinary enough. Soldiers trained in open fields, aircraft set on runways. Everything seemed normal for a human military installation. But Daniel kept walking toward a mountain at the edge of the base. As they approached the mountain, Zara saw a large metal door built into the rock face. Guards stood on either side. They saluted Daniel as he approached. One guard scanned Daniel's identification card, then looked at Zara with curiosity but said nothing. The massive door slid open with a deep rumbling sound. Beyond the door was a tunnel carved into the mountain. Bright lights lined the ceiling. The tunnel went deep into the earth, sloping downward. Daniel led her forward. Their footsteps echoed off the stone walls. After several minutes of walking, the tunnel opened into something that made Zara stop in amazement. It was a massive underground complex. The space was so large that Zara could not see the far walls. Multiple levels stretched above and below them, connected by stairs and elevators. Hundreds of people moved through the corridors. But what shocked Zara most was that many of them were not human. She saw beings from at least 20 different species. Some she recognized from Federation worlds. Others were completely unknown to her. They wore training uniforms and worked alongside human instructors. Aliens and humans training together. This should have been impossible. Earth was supposed to be isolated from the galactic community. Daniel watched her reaction with an amused smile. He explained that what she was seeing was called the Integration Training Complex. Humans had been building it for 30 years. It started small after the first alien contact in the late 20th century. Over the decades, as more species visited Earth, the facility grew larger and more sophisticated. But why? Zara asked. Why would humans build something like this? Why not announce themselves to the galaxy and join the Federation openly? Daniel said they needed to show her more before those questions would make sense. He led her deeper into the complex. They passed training rooms where beings from different worlds practiced combat techniques. They walked by classrooms where human instructors taught survival skills. They saw medical facilities, living quarters, and equipment storage areas. The complex was like a small city built entirely underground. Eventually, they reached an office where a woman sat working at a desk covered in reports and computer screens. She was in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform had even more badges than Daniel's. She looked up when they entered and smiled warmly. Daniel introduced her as Director Patricia Monroe. She was in charge of the entire facility. Patricia stood and shook Zara's hand in the human greeting custom. She invited them to sit and offered Zara something to drink. The casual friendliness felt strange given the incredible secret Zara had just discovered. Patricia began to explain. She said that over the past 50 years, many alien species had visited Earth. Some came to study humans, like Zara. Others came by accident. A few came seeking help. And from all these encounters, humans learned something important about the galaxy. Most advanced civilizations, Patricia explained, had become comfortable and soft. They lived in peace for so long that they forgot how to handle real danger. Their people relied entirely on technology and automated systems. When something went wrong, they did not know how to adapt. They panicked. They fell apart. Zara felt uncomfortable because she knew this was true of her own people. The Galactic Federation had not faced a real crisis in over 200 years. When minor problems occurred, entire planets struggled to cope. The systems designed to keep everyone safe had made them weak, Patricia continued. She said humans were different because Earth was a difficult planet. Humans had evolved in an environment full of challenges. They faced predators, diseases, natural disasters, and competition from other humans. Survival required constant adaptation and innovation. Humans learned to overcome obstacles through determination, creativity, and refusal to give up. This made humans valuable, Patricia said. Not because they had advanced technology, which they did not. Not because they were physically stronger than others, which they were not. Humans were valuable because they knew how to struggle and survive, and that knowledge could be taught. That was the purpose of this training facility. Humans took volunteers from other species and taught them human methods. How to survive without technology. How to think creatively when facing impossible situations. How to push beyond physical and mental limits. How to keep going when everything seemed hopeless. Zara asked why humans did this. What did they gain from training aliens? Patricia's expression became serious. She pulled up images on her computer screen showing deep space, strange patterns of dead solar systems, planets that had gone silent, entire civilizations that disappeared without explanation. Patricia said that human deep space probes had discovered something terrifying. Something was moving through the galaxy, destroying advanced civilizations. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Every few decades, another cluster of worlds would go dark. Whatever was causing this was systematic and unstoppable with conventional means. The Galactic Federation either did not know about this threat or chose to ignore it. But humans, with their history of facing existential dangers, took it seriously. They could not stop the threat alone. They were too primitive and isolated, but they could prepare others. They could teach survival skills that might make the difference when the threat finally reached Federation space. Zara felt cold fear spreading through her. This could not be real. But the data Patricia showed was convincing. Dozens of advanced civilizations had ceased all communications within short time periods. The pattern was unmistakable once she looked at it with fresh eyes. Why not warn the Federation directly, Zara asked. Patricia sighed. They tried, she said. But Federation leaders dismissed the evidence. They believed their technology and peaceful society made them safe from any threat. They had grown arrogant in their comfort. Direct warnings only made them angry and suspicious of human motives. So humans took a different approach. They trained individuals who would return to their home worlds. These graduates would spread human methods quietly. When the crisis came, and it would come, there would be people prepared to face it. People who knew how to adapt and survive. People who had learned the most important human skill, which was never giving up no matter the odds. Patricia looked at Zara carefully. She said that Daniel had recommended bringing Zara into the program. Her ship was destroyed beyond repair. She could contact the Federation for rescue, and they would come eventually. Or she could stay and learn what humans had to teach. The choice was hers. Zara's mind raced. Everything she thought she knew about humans and the galaxy had been turned upside down in one morning. Part of her wanted to dismiss this as human paranoia, but another part of her, the part that had watched humans for months and admired their resilience, believed every word. She thought about her own people back on Velros, comfortable, safe, and completely unprepared for real danger. If this threat was real, they would not survive without help. And here was a chance to learn how to help them. Zara looked at Patricia and Daniel. She said she wanted to stay. She wanted to join the training program. She wanted to learn everything humans could teach her. Patricia smiled and stood. She welcomed Zara officially to the program. Tomorrow, her real education would begin. Zara's training began the next morning at 5 o'clock. A loud alarm woke her from sleep. She stumbled out of her assigned quarters to find other trainees already gathering in the corridor. They were from many different species, all wearing identical gray training uniforms. A human instructor was waiting for them. His name was Victor Hayes. He was older than Daniel, probably in his 50s, with gray hair cut very short and scars on his arms. His voice was rough but not unkind. He told them they had 5 minutes to be ready for morning exercises. Anyone who was late would run extra distance as punishment. Zara had never exercised before in her life. On Velros, machines did all the physical work. People stayed healthy through medical treatments, not through training their bodies. But here Victor made them run. Not on machines, but outside in the desert heat. 5 kilometers before breakfast, Zara thought she would die. Her lungs burned. Her legs ached. Sweat poured down her face. Other trainees struggled too. Some were built for strength but not speed. Others could run fast but tired quickly. Everyone suffered together regardless of their species. Victor ran alongside them, not even breathing hard. He called out encouragement when they slowed down. He told them their bodies were capable of far more than they believed. The only limits were in their minds. When Zara wanted to stop, Victor would appear beside her and tell her to keep moving. Just 1 more minute, then another minute. Then another. After the run came breakfast. Real food, not the synthesized meals Zara was used to. The humans said proper nutrition was part of training. Then came classes. The first class was taught by a man named Nathan Brooks. He was a professor who studied human history. Nathan told them stories about human survival. He talked about explorers who crossed frozen wastelands with primitive equipment, about cities that were destroyed and rebuilt stronger than before, about individuals who faced impossible challenges and refused to surrender. Each story demonstrated the same thing. Humans did not give up when things got hard. They found a way forward. But Nathan also taught about human failures, wars that killed millions, mistakes that caused disasters, leaders who made terrible decisions. He said failure was an important teacher. The humans who learned from their mistakes became wiser and stronger. The ones who ignored their failures repeated them. Zara found this approach strange but fascinating. In Federation schools, they only taught about successes and progress. Failures were quietly forgotten. But Nathan said that hiding from failure made it impossible to learn from it. Humans studied their worst moments as carefully as their best ones. After lunch came practical training. Victor taught them basic survival skills. How to start a fire without modern tools. How to find water in the desert. How to build shelter from available materials. Everything was done without technology. Zara felt helpless at first. She had never done any of these things before. Victor showed them each task step by step. He was patient but demanding. When they made mistakes, he made them try again. And again, and again until they got it right. He said that knowledge without practice was useless. They needed to train their hands and bodies to work automatically, even when their minds were stressed or tired. The days blended together in a pattern of exhaustion and learning. Wake early, run until her legs felt like they would collapse, eat, study human methods, practice survival skills, physical training, more running, dinner, study time, sleep, then wake and do it all again. Zara's body adapted slowly. The first week was agony. Every muscle hurt. She fell asleep the moment she lay down each night. But gradually the pain became manageable. She could run farther without stopping. Her hands learned to work with primitive tools. Tasks that seemed impossible at first became routine. More importantly, her mind changed. Zara had always thought of herself as intelligent but physically weak. That was normal for her species. But Victor taught her that mental and physical strength were connected. When she pushed her body beyond what she thought possible, her confidence grew. She started believing she could handle difficult situations. After 1 month, Victor announced it was time for their first real test. He called it a field exercise. Each trainee would be taken to a remote location and left alone for 3 days. They would have basic supplies but no technology, no communication devices, no emergency beacons, just themselves and what they had learned. The goal was simple. Survive for 3 days, then navigate to a pickup point 10 kilometers away. The pickup point's location would be given to them using only a paper map and a basic compass. They had to reach it by the deadline or they would fail the exercise. Zara felt nervous but also excited. This was her chance to prove she had learned something. Victor seemed to sense her anxiety. Before they left, he pulled her aside. He told her she was stronger than she knew. The training had shown him that she had the right mindset. She just needed to trust herself. They took Zara to a rocky canyon area. The human pilot dropped her off with a small backpack containing basic supplies. Water for 2 days. Some dried food. A knife, rope, a fire-starting kit. A first aid kit. A map and compass. Nothing else. The helicopter flew away, leaving her completely alone. The silence was overwhelming at first. Zara had spent her whole life surrounded by people and machines. Now there was just wind, rocks, and empty sky. She felt small and vulnerable. But then she remembered Victor's training. She needed to assess her situation, find shelter before dark, locate water sources, plan her route to the pickup point. She studied the map carefully. The pickup point was 10 kilometers south. The terrain between here and there looked rough with steep hills. But there was a valley that might offer an easier path. She would need to navigate carefully. The first night was cold. Zara built a small shelter using rocks and her rope. She started a fire using the technique Victor taught her. The fire provided warmth and comfort. She ate some of her dried food and drank water sparingly. Tomorrow she would need to find more water. Day 2 was harder. She walked for hours across rough terrain. Her feet hurt. The sun was hot. She found a small stream and refilled her water. But she also got lost briefly when the map did not match what she saw around her. Panic started to rise. What if she could not find the pickup point? Then she remembered Nathan's lessons about human explorers. They got lost too, but they did not panic. They stopped, assessed their situation, and made a new plan. Zara did the same. She climbed to a high point and studied the landscape. There, in the distance, she saw the valley from the map. She had drifted west, but she could correct her path. On the 3rd day, tired and sore but determined, Zara reached the pickup point 2 hours before the deadline. A human soldier was waiting there with a vehicle. He congratulated her on completing the exercise. She had passed. When she returned to the training complex, Victor was there. He looked pleased. He told her she had done well. More importantly, she had proven to herself that she could survive alone without technology. That confidence would serve her for the rest of her life. Zara realized he was right. She had changed. The frightened alien who crashed on Earth 6 weeks ago would never have survived 3 days alone in the wilderness. But she had. And if she could do that, what else might she be capable of? Her training was just beginning, but already she felt like a different person. A stronger person. After 3 months of basic training, Zara moved to the advanced program. This was where the real purpose of the facility became clear. The instructors were preparing them not just to survive but to fight and protect others when danger came. Her new instructor was a woman named Katie Ryan. Katie was younger than Victor but had fought in multiple human conflicts around the world. She was small and lean, but Zara quickly learned that size meant nothing when it came to combat effectiveness. Katie could disable opponents twice her size using technique and speed. Katie taught combat in a way Zara had never seen before. Most military training in the Federation focused on operating advanced weapons systems. Soldiers sat in control rooms and directed automated defenses. Physical combat was considered primitive and unnecessary, but Katie said technology could fail. Weapons could be taken away. The only thing a warrior could always rely on was their own body and mind. The training focused on using an opponent's strengths against them. Katie demonstrated how a larger, stronger enemy could be defeated by someone smaller and weaker. It required understanding leverage, balance, and timing. She taught them to look for weaknesses and exploit them. Every opponent had vulnerabilities. The key was staying calm enough to find them. But combat training was about more than physical techniques. Katie spent hours teaching them about fear and how to control it. She said fear was natural and useful. It kept you alert and ready to respond to danger, but fear could also paralyze you if you let it take control. The difference between a good warrior and a poor one was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. They practiced in simulated high-stress situations. Loud noises, smoke, darkness. Scenarios where they had to make quick decisions with incomplete information. Katie pushed them to their mental breaking points to teach them how to stay functional under extreme pressure. She said stress was like physical pain. You could learn to work through it with practice. During one training exercise, Zara found herself in a dark room filled with obstacles. She had to reach an objective while avoiding hazards and simulated enemies. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. She wanted to quit. But then she remembered Katie's lessons. She took a deep breath, focused on the next step instead of the whole challenge, moved forward one decision at a time. She completed the exercise. It was not perfect, but she finished. Katie told her that was what mattered. Perfect performance was impossible under real stress. The goal was to keep functioning and making decisions even when everything felt overwhelming. That ability would save her life someday. Alongside combat training, Zara studied with a psychologist named Lauren Grant. Lauren taught mental resilience and emotional control. She explained that physical training and combat skills were not enough. A person's mind had to be strong too, otherwise trauma and stress would break them eventually. Lauren taught techniques for managing difficult emotions, how to process fear without being controlled by it, how to maintain hope in desperate situations, how to recover from failures and setbacks. She said humans had learned these skills through thousands of years of facing hardship. Now they were sharing that knowledge with others. One lesson particularly stuck with Zara. Lauren talked about the concept of post-traumatic growth. She explained that trauma did not have to destroy a person. With proper support and mindset, people could actually become stronger after experiencing terrible things. They gained perspective, empathy, and mental toughness that could only come from surviving hardship. This idea was revolutionary to Zara. In Federation society, any trauma was treated as permanent damage that needed to be medicated or erased from memory, but humans believed trauma could be transformed into strength. It required work and time, but it was possible. This philosophy explained so much about human resilience. As the months passed, Zara noticed changes in herself beyond just physical fitness. She stood taller. She spoke with more confidence. When problems arose, her first instinct was no longer to panic, but to analyze and adapt. The training had rewired her brain to see challenges as opportunities rather than threats. She also formed close bonds with other trainees. They came from different worlds and spoke different languages, but they shared the common experience of being pushed to their limits. They helped each other through difficult days. They celebrated each other's successes. Zara learned that this camaraderie was another human concept. Shared suffering created strong connections between people. One evening, Daniel invited Zara to join him for dinner outside the training complex. They sat in a small restaurant in the nearest town. It felt strange to be around normal humans who had no idea about the secret facility in the mountain. Daniel asked how she was adjusting to the training. Zara admitted that it was the hardest thing she had ever done. Every day pushed her beyond what she thought she could handle. But it was also the most rewarding experience of her life. She was becoming someone she never imagined she could be, someone capable and strong, someone who could make a difference. Daniel smiled. He said that was exactly what the program was designed to do. Humans believed everyone had potential for greatness inside them. Most people never discovered it because they never faced challenges that forced them to grow. This training revealed that potential and taught people how to access it. He also warned her that the hardest test was still ahead. In 2 months, she would face the final evaluation. It was called the Crucible. Every trainee had to complete it to graduate from the program. Daniel could not tell her the specific details, but he said it would test everything she had learned. Physical endurance, mental toughness, combat skills, survival ability, problem solving under pressure. Many trainees failed the Crucible on their first attempt. Some never passed it at all and returned home without graduating. The test was designed to push people to their absolute limits. Only those who refused to quit no matter what happened would succeed. Zara felt nervous but determined. She had come too far to fail now. She would prepare as hard as she could. She would use every skill the instructors taught her. And when the test came, she would prove that she had truly learned what it meant to be resilient like a human. The next 2 months were intense. The training became even harder as they prepared for the final evaluation. Longer runs, more difficult combat scenarios, complex problem-solving exercises with no clear solutions. The instructors were preparing them for anything and everything. Victor told them the secret to passing the Crucible was not about being perfect. It was about refusing to surrender. The test would break them down physically and mentally. It would make them want to quit. Everyone reached a point where continuing seemed impossible. The ones who graduated were the ones who kept moving forward anyway. Zara thought about her people back on Velros. If the threat Patricia had shown her was real, they would need someone who could teach them how to survive. They would need someone who understood human methods and could adapt them for her species. That responsibility weighed on her, but it also gave her purpose. She was not just training for herself anymore. She was training for her entire civilization. That thought gave her strength during the hardest moments. When her body screamed for rest, she thought about her family and friends who might depend on this knowledge someday. When her mind wanted to quit, she remembered why she started this journey. Finally, the day came. Victor gathered all the trainees who were ready for the crucible. He looked at each of them seriously. He told them he was proud of how far they had come. Now it was time to prove to themselves what they were capable of. The test would begin at dawn. They should rest well tonight. Tomorrow would change their lives forever. The crucible began before sunrise. Zara and 20 other trainees were loaded into separate helicopters. Nobody told them where they were going or what they would face. They flew for hours across changing landscapes, mountains, forests, and finally frozen wilderness. When Zara's helicopter landed, she stepped out into snow and bitter cold. The wind cut through her clothes like knives. A human instructor she had never seen before handed her a backpack and a sealed envelope. He told her the instructions were inside. She had 10 days to complete the test. Then he climbed back into the helicopter and left her alone. Zara opened the envelope with shaking hands. The instructions were simple but terrifying. She was somewhere in the Arctic Circle. She had to reach an extraction point 300 kilometers south. She had a map, a compass, basic survival gear, and 10 days of emergency rations. No communication device, no emergency beacon. If she failed to reach the extraction point in time, she would have to wait another month in the wilderness or give up and signal for rescue, which meant failing the test. The first day was about accepting reality. Zara had never experienced cold like this. Her species evolved on a warm planet. The Arctic felt like death itself. She wanted to panic. She wanted to call for help. But she remembered Victor's lessons. Panic killed people. Clear thinking saved lives. She forced herself to think logically. First priority was shelter from the wind. She found a protected area among some rocks and built a snow shelter using techniques she had learned. It was hard work that made her sweat despite the cold, but when she finished, the shelter blocked the wind and trapped her body heat. It was still cold but survivable. That night, huddled in her shelter, Zara questioned whether she could do this. 10 days in these conditions seemed impossible. 300 kilometers was so far. What if she got injured? What if she got lost? What if the cold simply killed her? But then she remembered Nathan's history lessons about human explorers. They had crossed Antarctica with equipment far more primitive than what she carried. They had suffered frostbite, starvation, and exhaustion. Some died, but others survived through sheer determination. If humans could do it, maybe she could too. She broke the journey into smaller goals. Forget about 300 kilometers. Just focus on reaching the next checkpoint on her map. Just survive today, then survive tomorrow. One day at a time. One step at a time. That felt manageable. Day 2 and 3 were grueling. Walking through snow was exhausting. Every step required effort. The cold never stopped. She rationed her food carefully. Knowing she might need it to last longer than 10 days if something went wrong, she melted snow for water. She navigated using her map and compass, double-checking every decision. On day 4, disaster struck. She was crossing a frozen stream when the ice cracked beneath her. She fell into freezing water up to her waist. The shock was incredible. She scrambled out onto solid ice, but now she was soaking wet in sub-zero temperatures. This could kill her within hours. Panic tried to take hold, but Katie's combat training had taught her to stay calm in crisis situations. Zara forced herself to think. She needed fire immediately. She needed to dry her clothes and warm her body. Her hands were already going numb, making everything harder. She found a sheltered spot and gathered dry wood from beneath snow-covered trees. Her fingers barely worked, but she managed to start a fire using her emergency kit. She stripped off her wet clothes and huddled near the flames, shaking violently. For hours she fed the fire and let it warm her. Her clothes dried slowly. She knew she had lost most of a day, but she was alive. That night, recovered enough to continue, Zara felt something change inside her. She had faced a life-threatening emergency alone and survived. She had not panicked. She had not given up. She had applied her training and solved the problem. If she could do that, she could handle whatever else this test threw at her. Days 5 through 8 blurred together, walking, navigating, building shelters, melting snow, rationing food, pushing through exhaustion and cold. Her body adapted somewhat. The cold still hurt, but she learned to function despite it. Her mind grew quiet and focused. There was only the next step. The next checkpoint. The next day. She thought a lot during those long days of walking. About her life before the crash. About her people on Velros. About everything she had learned here. She realized that training had taught her more than survival skills. It had taught her who she really was underneath all her fears and doubts. She was stronger than she ever knew. More capable. More resilient. On day 9, she reached a point where she could see the extraction zone in the distance. It was still hours away, but she would make it. Unless something terrible happened in the last stretch, she was going to complete the crucible. She wanted to run toward it, but she forced herself to stay cautious. Victor had warned them that most accidents happened when people got overconfident near the end. She maintained her steady pace, checked her navigation, watched for hazards. She had come too far to fail through carelessness now. On the afternoon of day 10, frostbitten and exhausted but moving under her own power, Zara walked into the extraction zone. A small camp was set up there. Katie and Victor were waiting with warm clothes, hot food, and medical supplies. When they saw her, they both smiled with genuine pride. Victor helped her to a seat by a warm fire. Katie wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. They did not say much at first. They let her warm up and drink hot soup. Then Victor spoke. He told her she had passed. She was one of only 12 trainees from her group who completed the crucible on the first attempt. She had proven she had learned what they tried to teach. Katie added that the test was not really about the physical challenge. It was about discovering mental toughness, about learning that limits were mostly imaginary, about proving to yourself that you could handle things you thought were impossible. Zara had done that. She would carry that knowledge for the rest of her life. 2 weeks later, after recovering from the ordeal, Zara stood with the other graduates in a ceremony at the training complex. Patricia, Daniel, Victor, Katie, Nathan, Lauren, and many other instructors were present. Beings from a dozen different species watched as each graduate received their completion certificate. Patricia gave a speech. She told them they were not just trained survivors now. They were carriers of human philosophy. Each of them would return to their homeworlds with knowledge that could save their people. They had learned to be resilient, to adapt, to never surrender in the face of challenge. These qualities would spread through their actions and teaching. When Zara received her certificate from Daniel, he shook her hand warmly. He told her he had no doubt she would do great things. She had the mind of a leader and the heart of a warrior. Her people were lucky to have her. That evening, Zara sat alone looking at her certificate. 1 year ago, she had been a simple observer watching humans from space. Then her ship crashed and everything changed. She discovered a secret that transformed her understanding of humanity and herself. She underwent training that pushed her beyond every limit she thought she had. She became someone new, someone stronger. Tomorrow she would begin her journey home. She would return to the Galactic Federation with knowledge and skills that could help her entire civilization. She did not know exactly what challenges waited for her, but she knew she was ready. Whatever came, she would face it the way humans faced adversity. With courage, creativity, and absolute refusal to quit, the human secret training ground had indeed changed her life. But more than that, it had given her a mission. She would spend the rest of her days teaching others what she learned here. She would help her people rediscover the strength that all beings possessed but often forgot. And when the danger that humans warned about finally arrived, her people would be ready. Because of this place, because of what humans taught her. As she sat there in the quiet evening, Zara smiled. She was going home, but she was taking the best parts of humanity with her. Zara's return to Federation space was not what she expected. The humans had provided her with a small ship and supplies for the journey home. Daniel, Patricia, and her other instructors came to see her off. They reminded her that she was always welcome to return. The training ground would be there if she ever needed it. The journey took 3 weeks. During that time, Zara prepared her reports and planned how to convince Federation leaders about what she had learned. She knew it would not be easy. The Federation had become comfortable with their safe, peaceful existence. They would not want to hear about threats or the need for difficult training. When she arrived at Federation headquarters, her superiors were shocked to see her. They had assumed she died in the crash over a year ago. Her ship's destruction had been detected, but no distress signal was received. They had written her off as lost. Zara explained what happened. The crash, the rescue by humans, the discovery of the training facility, her year of learning human survival methods. She presented all her evidence about the threat moving through the galaxy. She showed recordings and data that the humans had shared with her. The response was skepticism and dismissal. Her superior, an admiral named Brandon Cortez, listened politely but clearly did not believe her. He suggested that the crash had affected her judgment. Perhaps the humans had manipulated her for their own purposes. The idea of a major threat to the Federation was ridiculous. They had advanced technology and 3 centuries of peace. Nothing could threaten them. A council member named Linda Harper was even more hostile. She accused Zara of breaking non-interference protocols by making contact with humans. She questioned whether Zara had been compromised by exposure to a primitive warrior culture. The Federation valued peace and cooperation, not this obsession with combat and survival training. Zara tried to stay calm like Lauren had taught her. She understood their reaction. They had no context for understanding real danger. Their entire civilization had been built on avoiding conflict. They could not imagine a threat that their technology could not solve. But that made them vulnerable in ways they did not realize. She requested permission to establish training programs based on human methods. She offered to teach other Federation personnel what she had learned. Both requests were denied. The Council said such programs would be disruptive and unnecessary. They assigned Zara to a quiet administrative position where she could do no harm. Frustrated but not defeated, Zara began working unofficially. She reached out to younger officers and civilians who were willing to listen. She found people who sensed something wrong with the Federation's complacency. People who wanted to be more than just comfortable citizens living safe, predictable lives. She started small training groups in her free time, teaching basic survival skills, sharing human philosophy about resilience and adaptability. Word spread slowly. More people became interested. Within 6 months, she had a network of volunteers who met regularly to learn and practice. The Federation leadership did not approve, but they did not stop her either. They saw it as a harmless hobby, a way for a traumatized officer to work through her experiences. They did not take it seriously. That was their first mistake. 2 years after Zara's return, the threat became real. Ships appeared at the edge of Federation space. Unknown vessels with technology that did not match any known civilization. They did not respond to communication attempts. They simply attacked. The first Federation world to be hit was completely unprepared. Their automated defenses were overwhelmed in hours. Their military had no experience with real combat. Billions died in the initial assault. The attackers then moved to the next system, leaving nothing but silent, dead worlds behind. Panic spread through Federation space. More attacks followed. World after world fell despite desperate defensive efforts. The Federation military, built for peacekeeping and exploration, could not adapt to actual warfare. Officers who had only trained in simulations froze when facing real death. Strategies that worked in theory failed in practice. But there were exceptions. Military units that included Zara's trained volunteers performed differently. They did not panic. They adapted to changing situations. They found creative solutions to impossible problems. They fought with a determination that surprised everyone, especially themselves. These units survived battles that destroyed conventional Federation forces. Reports reached Federation leadership about these exceptional performances. Investigations revealed the common factor. All the successful units had personnel who trained with Zara using human methods. Suddenly, the training that was dismissed as unnecessary became desperately important. The Council summoned Zara, Brandon Cortez, and Linda Harper, who had dismissed her warnings 2 years ago, now asked for her help. They needed to implement her training programs immediately across all Federation forces. They also needed her to do something harder. They needed her to contact Earth and ask humans for assistance. Zara agreed, but only if the Federation formally recognized Earth and ended the policy of isolation. The humans had been trying to warn and prepare other species for decades. It was time to acknowledge their efforts and accept them as partners. The council had no choice but to agree. She sent a message to the training facility. Within days, human response teams began arriving at Federation worlds. They brought military advisors, combat instructors, and strategic planners. But more importantly, they brought hope and the knowledge that this enemy could be fought. Daniel himself came to coordinate the human response. When he met with Zara again, he hugged her like an old friend. He told her that Patricia and everyone at the facility were proud of what she had accomplished. Despite official rejection, she had kept teaching and preparing people. Those trained individuals were now making a real difference in the war. The war lasted 3 brutal years. Billions died, entire worlds were lost. But slowly the tide turned. Federation forces learned to fight using human tactics. They became more adaptive and resilient. They stopped seeing every setback as a disaster, and instead looked for opportunities to counterattack. Human ships and personnel fought alongside Federation forces in major battles. They did not have the most advanced technology, but they understood warfare in ways that others had forgotten. They taught aggressive defense. They showed how to use enemy strengths against them. Most importantly, they demonstrated that refusal to surrender could turn seemingly hopeless situations into victories. When the war finally ended with the enemy driven back beyond known space, the galaxy was forever changed. The Federation abandoned its policy of comfortable isolation. They established mandatory resilience training for all citizens based on human methods. They built training facilities across Federation space, all modeled after the original complex on Earth. Zara was appointed to lead the new Resilience Division. Her job was to ensure that no Federation world would ever again be as unprepared as they were when the war began. She worked with human instructors to adapt training methods for different species and cultures. The program grew rapidly. Earth was offered full Federation membership with all benefits and advanced technology. Everyone expected humans to accept eagerly. But Patricia politely declined on behalf of her government. She explained that if humans became too comfortable with Federation technology, they would lose the very qualities that made them valuable. They would become soft like everyone else. Humans preferred to remain independent partners rather than full members. They would continue teaching and helping others, but they would maintain their own challenging lifestyle. They believed the galaxy needed humans to stay sharp and ready, because there would always be another crisis. The universe was not a safe place and never would be. 10 years after the war ended, Zara returned to Earth for an anniversary celebration at the training facility. The complex had expanded massively. Thousands of students from hundreds of species trained there now. Both human instructors and graduates like herself taught the methods that had saved the Federation. She found Daniel in his old office, now semi-retired but still involved in the program. They walked through the facility together, watching new trainees struggle through the same challenges she had faced a decade ago. Daniel asked if she ever regretted crashing on Earth all those years ago. Zara laughed. She told him it was the best thing that ever happened to her. That crash changed her from a comfortable observer into someone who could make a real difference. This place and these methods gave her a purpose worth dedicating her entire life to, helping others discover their own strength, teaching them that they were capable of far more than they imagined. She looked at the trainees with pride. She saw herself in them, scared, uncertain, but willing to try. That willingness was the beginning of transformation. Soon they would discover what she learned. That the human secret was not about being fearless or perfect. It was about refusing to quit. About getting back up every time you fell. About believing you could grow stronger through challenge rather than being broken by it. The human secret training ground had changed her life. But through her efforts and the efforts of thousands of other graduates, it had changed the entire galaxy. And that was worth every difficult moment of training, every painful lesson, every time she wanted to quit but chose to continue instead. All